In this video, we'll be going over collision detection for our no internet game so that when the player rectangle runs into one of our obstacles, the game will stop. So before we actually get started coding here, let's go ahead and go over our approach to collision. So the first thing we're going to be adding is a new attribute in our player and obstacle classes that will basically just store our rectangles. This is the same rectangle in our code that's in the drawing section of each of our classes. So if we go down here to our player, in the draw section, this in between parentheses where we are basically providing the rectangle with the x, y, as well as the width and the height is where we have our rectangles currently. It will make more sense for collision detection to have it up here with the rest of our attributes. So the first thing we're going to do is move that from inside our drawing command up into our attribute section for both our player and our obstacle classes. And the reason why we're doing that is kind of tied to the second point here. It's because Pygame has a built-in method called collide rect that will basically tell us if the rectangles are overlapping. And we know if they are overlapping, then that's where we have a collision, and we want our game to end once we have a collision. So basically what this function will do is it will return true if it has collided with an obstacle and false if it hasn't. So once we have that method done, we are going to go to our update section of our game loop, and we'll just check to see if the player has collided with the obstacle using our method that we made. And if it has, then we're going to just print that there was a collision. And then later on, we will change this to show some kind of restart screen. And then if not, then we're going to use our code that we currently have for updating the player and obstacle. And we'll just put that inside an else statement. Okay, so now that we kind of know what we're doing, let's start with this first point here where we're going to add the rectangles to the player and obstacle classes. So going back to our code, go to our player section, and again, we're going to make a new attribute that is going to store the rectangle. So we're just going to call this rect, so say rect equals, and then what we're going to do is we're going to copy the code down here that is drawing the rectangle, and make sure you include the parentheses in that, and then we're going to paste it right there. Okay. Now this needs to be stored as a Pygame rectangle object. So in front of the parentheses, we're going to say pygame.rect with a capital R. All right. And then the other thing that we need to do here is the self and then the dot to access these attributes is only required when you are inside a method, such as inside jump or inside the draw method. It is not required. And it actually will give us an error if we try to run it now with these. So we want to go through each one of these attributes and delete the self and the dot in front of it. Okay, now that that's there, what we can do is we can actually just take all of this code that we use to draw our rectangle. Since we have it stored in our attribute section, we can get rid of it here and just say self.rect. Okay, so let's save that and run it just so you can see what we get. So you'll notice our rectangle here moved. We need to basically, in our code, we need to remove this /2 to get it so it's up on the ground line and not halfway through it like it is. The other thing that you'll notice, if you press the spacebar and try to jump, you are not able to jump anymore. The reason why is because we have stored the rectangle in the attribute, and then we are telling it to draw that rectangle. But when we move it, when we press jump, we're not telling it to update this rectangle attribute, so therefore it's not moving the player. So when we draw it, we also need to make sure that we are updating this rectangle attribute in our code. So let's first get our rectangle back on the ground line here. So let's just get rid of the /2 and then run it, make sure that was fixed, and it was. Again, still not able to jump, so let's fix that. So down here in our draw section, we're going to change our rectangle attribute. So I'm going to just copy this line of code that we added, add that before our draw command, and then again, since we are inside a method here, we want to say self.rect, and then the same thing actually in front of each one of these parameters. So I'm going to just copy the self and the dot just to make this go a little bit quicker, and paste it in front of every single one of those attributes. Okay, so if we save that and run it, we should be able to jump now. Again, you'll notice our rectangle is kind of on top, but we are able to jump like we were before. To get it so it's back on the ground line, we need to put a /2 at the end here. Now if we run it, the player should be working perfectly. Again, you'll notice it is not doing any type of collision detection because we haven't added that yet. All we're doing is we're moving our code around a little bit to add that collision detection here in a little bit. So let's go down to our obstacle and we're going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to start by copying the rectangle code, and then we'll say rect pygame.rect, and then we'll put all that code there. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the update part here. And then just copy this. And then after I have that, I will go ahead and delete all of these self dot references in front of these attributes. Okay, the last thing that we need to do is get rid of the rectangles there and just say self.rect. Okay, save that and just make sure that it runs just like it did before. It does. Again, you'll notice no type of collision is happening because we haven't added that yet. So let's go ahead and add that. So if we scroll up to the top here in our player class, we're going to make a new method. So we're going to say def, and then we're going to call this is collided with. And we'll say self, comma, and then the only other parameter here will be the obstacle, and that will be the rectangle of the obstacle to check if those rectangles have overlapped. Okay, we're just going to have one line in here, so we'll just say return self.rect. And what we want here is this function right here that says collide rect, which is Pygame's built-in collision detection, at least for rectangles. So if those rectangles are overlapping, it'll basically return true, and if they're not, it will return false. So say obstacle.rect there. Okay, so that method is done. So what we need to do now is scroll down to our update section and just add that code so we can check to see if those rectangles have overlapped. So we're going to say if player dot is collided with, and then we'll say obstacle. And then again, if they have collided for today, what we're going to do is just put a print collided. And then if they have not, which means that we should have an else here, we're going to update them like we have before. So we're just going to indent those into that else statement. Okay, if we run that now, you will notice that the game stops when they collide, and then we get this collision or the collided message that is constantly repeating, which is exactly what we want. So thanks for watching. See you guys next time.